Hey folks, in today's video I'm going to give you the roadmap on how to lose body fat and keep it off in a sustainable way that still allows you to enjoy the foods that you love and do the activities and the day-to-day things that you really enjoy doing. I think there's this misconception amongst people that to lose body fat and to get the body that you want, you have to dedicate every single waking hour to either exercising or eating broccoli and chicken, and it's just definitely not the case. If you've got a structured plan in place, that is all you need, along with some motivation and some consistency to achieve your goal. So whether you're 21 years old, 45 years old, whether you've got a family, whether you're a student, whatever your circumstances, there is a method and a route out there for you to achieve your body goals and your body fat level goals safely, sensibly, and whilst eating and doing the things that you love. So in the description, all these pointers that I'm going to go through are going to be timestamped, so if you haven't got massive amounts of time, feel free to sort of jump down to the description below and go to the areas that are of interest to you. I'm also going to put a link into the way that we create our calorie deficits and set up our eating plan. So this will become a little bit more apparent to you in a minute. So I won't go into huge amounts of detail on that. I'll leave that to the link. But if you've got any questions, please do leave them in the comment section and I will get back to you and try and help you out. This is going to be like a roadmap, a masterclass. I'm not going to go into every area in huge detail because we'll just be here for hours. Future videos I may deep dive into specific sections a little bit more, but I think this is just going to be an overview for you sat at home now. By the end of the video you'll be able to basically implement this information and get going on your fat loss journey absolutely immediately. So point number one, key and probably one of the most key parts of this, is that you need to be in a calorific deficit. So basically, if you don't know what calorific deficit is, it's consuming less calories than you burn on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you haven't tracked your food ever, then at least to start with, I think it's going to be a really good idea. So link in the description, but download MyFitnessPal. I think it's a fantastic way and an easy way of tracking your calories. And secondly, the link on how to create your diet that we use is also in the description as well, and you're going to need that. But I'll go over the kind of key points of that so you can kind of connect the dots and you're not kind of left hung out to dry. So in creating a calorific deficit, we have to start somewhere, and the starting point is establishing your basal metabolic rate. So basically that means how many calories you burn without activity. So for me, I'm about 18 or 1900 calories a day, something like that. Don't quote me on it. That's how many calories I burn without any activity bolted in. It takes into factors like your gender and your weight and things like that. Once you've established your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, you then need to multiply that by an activity multiplier. So again, it's in the link in the description. The more active you are, the more that you're doing. So if you're doing tons of steps, you're like a labourer or someone that's on their feet all day, 10, 15, 20,000 steps, your activity multiplier is going to be higher than someone who is sedentary, who doesn't move a lot through the day, who doesn't do a lot of activity. So this is where it gets a little bit more specific to you. I think for me, my activity multiplier ends or gives me a calorific kind of maintenance at about 2,500 calories. So the activity that I do, the steps that I do, things that I do daily bring me to about 2,500 calories. Everyone's going to be different on that. And what I would say is, this is a little bit of an insight from the people I've worked with, I'd always err on the side of caution with your activity multiplier. So what I mean by that is, unless you're an elite level athlete, I would err on the side of caution. So if you're kind of thinking between kind of two multipliers, let's say the very active one or the active one, if you're looking to lose body fat, I'd go with the active instead of the very active, because there can be a little bit of kind of discrepancy there. And just choosing the slightly more sedentary version just gives you that little bit more deficit, essentially. And you can always change it if you basically got it wrong and a couple of weeks in you just feel like it's not right, then you can always go up. But I'd always err on the side of the caution with the activity multiplier that I choose. So once you've got your kind of maintenance number, so first off we were figuring out our BMR. Let's use me as an example. Let's say it was 1900. Then my activity multiplier took me to 2,500 calories. That is how many calories I need to maintain my body weight at 80 kilos doing the activities and the things that I do day to day. So if I want to lose some body fat, I would put myself into a calorific deficit. Now, I would always say with a calorific deficit, start small. That way it's going to be sustainable over time, and as you need to drop calories as the time goes on, you've got somewhere to go. What we don't want to do is get in and around our BMR. So basically, I don't want to be at 1900 calories straight away, or even ever really. I want to be above my basal metabolic rate. So starting small, eating as much as we possibly can to lose weight, or lose body fat, should I say, is a really sustainable way of doing it. So choose a small deficit. Now, if you're a smaller human in general, I would go with a smaller deficit. So if you're like a female that's like 60 kilos, you're probably looking at like 100 calories. And if you're looking at your numbers on the form, you're probably going to be seeing that they're quite close to your BMR. So yeah, you're going to look for a smaller one. If you're a bigger human in general and you've got quite a gap between your BMR and your maintenance, like for example, mine's about 600 calories because I'm fairly active, then I can probably go with a 250 calorie deficit to start. So let's say I would then go to 2,250 calories a day. If you've got any questions on this, feel free to chuck it into the comments section. So I'm now set up with a small deficit. So I've established my BMR, I've established my activity levels for what I do. I've started with a small deficit. I've gone with 250 calories a day. I now need to track this. So that's where MyFitnessPal comes in. It's really, really simple. You can scan barcodes. You can search particular foods. You can create recipes. And you can actually put in all your kind of calorific targets into the goals section of MyFitnessPal on the free one. And it then starts to show you like a pie chart, a graph of your day-to-day and how close you're basically getting to that. And because we're creatures of habit, once you've kind of put in like your standard breakfast, your standard lunch, your standard dinner, or your rotation of those, once they're in the system, they're really easy to add again. So basically it's super, super simple to track once you're up and running. So that's the first section, guys. Establishing your BMR, working out your calorific deficit, downloading MyFitnessPal, and then, yeah, it's time to start tracking. What I would say is you absolutely want to track everything you eat from, at least to start with, 7 days a week. And then you want to track your progress in terms of your body fat, whether that's through photos, whether that's through weight, whether that's through measurements. If it's my recommendation, it would probably be all three. Weight isn't the best measure for fat loss. We can have daily fluctuations in weight, and people always have this assumption that like if you put weight on that it's body fat, and it might not be. In fact, it will, more often than it isn't the case, especially when you're at least trying to make a conscious effort to decrease body fat. It could be water retention, the clothes you're wearing, the time of day that you're weighing yourself. So I would go with photos, front, back, and side. I'd go with measurements of just basic things like the hips, chest, and any key areas that you want to focus on as well, and the scales as well. And if you've got kind of access to someone to do body fat for you, so body fat percentage in terms of the millimeters, the calipers on your skin, that's an extra little one you can do, but you absolutely don't have to do that. Yeah, and then it's about start tracking the progress, guys. And I would say, with hand on heart, progress is not linear. I worked with a gentleman who ended up losing about 5.5 stone over an 18-month period, and he would really often have only 1 week out of the 4 in a month where there'd be a bit of fat loss. So first week would be like 2 pounds, then it'd be like nothing, 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 and then like 2 or 3 pounds, and then nothing, and it went like that the whole time. And as he got further through his journey, there was more and more weeks where there was like no fat loss at all, in terms of the scales. But when you look at the overall kind of start point to end point, you see this 5.5 stone gone over 18 months and a shed load of centimetres on his measurements as well. And obviously the visuals and all of that sort of stuff. So progress isn't always linear. That's why I recommended multiple versions of tracking as well. So it's just having confidence to stick with what you're doing. And I would look for an average of sort of 1 to 2 pounds a week, but I wouldn't look at that over the weekly setup. I'd look at that over sort of a 4 to 6 week mark, something like that. So if you're losing kind of, 4 pounds, 6 pounds over a 4 to 6 week mark, something like that, that's absolutely fine, but that might not necessarily be every single week. So just bear that in mind. But if you do start to notice that you're kind of plateauing a little bit in terms of your fat loss, and what I mean by that is if you've gone like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and you're still stable or whatever, then it might be time just to decrease that calorific deficit by 50 calories or 100 calories. Again, really, really small, really minute changes. Again, with this gentleman that I worked with that lost 5.5 stone over 18 months, it was tiny little tweaks. There was no major kind of big changes. It was just all very incrementally done. So when you're tracking, don't panic. Stay consistent to the structure and consistent to what I'm going to tell you in this video, and watch that progress over time. So that leads me into my next point, which is the importance of protein. Now, in the link in the description, the kind of recommendations for fat, protein, and carbs are all laid out there, but it's a bit of a framework. And what I would say is, you want protein content to be nice and high, anywhere between kind of, I would say you want to look for about 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight. But potentially, if you're a weight trainer, a lifter, you probably want that to be up to about 2 grams of protein per kilo. So for me, I'm 80 kilos. I lift sort of 3 to 4 times a week. So really, I'm looking for about 160 grams a day. But I could get away with sort of, 80, about 120, about 1.5. So anywhere between 120 and 160. So 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight. And the reason we want protein nice and high is obviously helps with kind of repair and maintenance of muscle mass. But also it's highly correlated to basically food satisfaction. So if you ate like 500 calories of protein versus 500 calories of carbohydrate, you're going to be fuller off of 500 calories of protein than you are off 500 calories of carbs. So having a high percentage of your diet of good quality protein is going to be really, really important for not only maintaining muscle mass, building muscle mass, but also food sort of satisfaction, and therefore the ability to keep you in a calorific deficit for longer without feeling like you basically need to go and raid McDonald's. Cool, so that's kind of the food side of things out the way for now. So the next big key point for me is it's not just about the diet. There are other things that you can do to basically not speed it along, but just make it a more well-rounded fat loss program. And the one big one I would say bolted on with that is you want to be resistance training, so weightlifting, pumping iron, whatever you want to call it. That wants to be a key part of your week. So the reasons for that are, if you're in a calorific deficit, you might, if you're not lifting, your body might start to shift muscle mass. And as we get older, after about the age of 25, we start to lose muscle mass on the regular. So if you're, not that it matters really, you basically don't want to be losing muscle mass. You want to be maintaining or even building muscle mass. So resistance training does just that. If we've got muscle mass there, then we're going to maintain it via continuing to lift because the body thinks it needs it, because you're challenging it in ways where it's required. But even better, if you're kind of new, you can actually build a little bit of early kind of muscle mass, even in a calorific deficit, which is going to bring your sort of basal metabolic rate up a little bit and give you more calories to play with, basically. So you're going to require more calories to maintain your body mass. So yeah, resistance training is really, really key. And just from a body composition point of view, like, we all want to look good. And so just having some muscle mass there, high muscle mass and low body fat, just looks really, really good. Looks much healthier. If you look at kind of endurance runners that maybe don't do any lifting, sometimes you look at them, very low muscle mass, maybe yes, low body fat, but they don't actually look great. Someone who lifts, has got some shape and some sort of actual tone through, legs and upper body and things like that with low body fat, generally looks really good and really cool. And the extra added bonus to it is the metabolic sort of damage, the metabolic stimulation that it does to the body in terms of increasing fat loss as well. So there really is no reason not to lift at all. I would say start out with a couple of times a week if you're not doing any now, so 2 full body lifting sessions. Form that as part of the kind of the fat loss journey. Make that the foundation, the basis of your week, and go from there. If you're regularly lifting 3-4 times, then that's cool. It'll be obviously taken care of when you work out your calories in the first part of this chat. So yeah, resistance training, guys, needs to be an absolute fundamental part of your fat loss journey for optimal health, really, as well as actually losing the body fat. Point number 3, I touched on it already in terms of the calorific deficit, but this is huge, consistency. Like I said, don't kind of expect changes straight away. Just using the person that I used earlier, the 5.5 stone in 18 months, that was an 18-month process. If you're weighing yourself every week, that's going to feel quite a long time, 18 months. You're going to get a lot of weeks where there doesn't appear to be any changes, but you look at the macro change that person's had, it's been astronomical. So stick to the process, stick to the deficit, stick to the good eating, and stick to the resistance training, guys. So consistency. Look at this as like, try and make this something that's sustainable. That's why I've recommended low calorie deficits, because I don't want you guys kind of falling off the bandwagon after 5 minutes. That's why I recommended high protein there, because I want you guys to be satisfied so you can then continue. You can continue to maintain the information that I've told you over the course of 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 24 months, and smash your goals. So yeah, stay consistent. So next point is NEAT, N-E-A-T, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, if you don't know, we don't actually burn a huge amount of calories from our exercise. So if you're thinking, I'm going to exercise like 7 days a week, I'm going to be doing high intensity interval training, I'm going to be doing weightlifting, we're doing this, I'm going to be doing that, doesn't actually put a massive dent into your calorific expenditure. Hence why the calorific deficit is so key and such a pivotal part of a fat loss journey. But actually what it does have a big effect on kind of just overall health, as well as, improving the fat loss, is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that's just what you do on a day-to-day basis. So it's just basically improving kind of, instead of just being sat down all the time like I am right now, it's just like moving about more, taking the stairs instead of the lift, getting up and just having a walk, in the mid-morning as opposed to just going maybe all the way through, taking the dog out, in the morning and the evening, walking more. Just those sorts of things where it's kind of really low level kind of movement, but without massive stress on the body. So if you're kind of doing 2.5 to 5,000 steps a day, you might look to make that up to about 10,000 steps a day, and maybe, have a standing desk instead of a seated desk. Add in those little walks kind of at lunchtime and break time. Said take the stairs instead of the lift, and just bring that kind of really low level movement up a notch. That's going to have a really, really positive impact, not only on your fat loss, but on your health, guys. I always think the two are massively linked. And if you're going into this with just the sole purpose of fat loss without optimizing health, then you're already off on the wrong foot. all these things and all these points that I'm making are about optimizing your health for, again, like I said in the title, for a sustainable life. So I think just general more movement for us in the 21st century lifestyle is really, really key. Who just sits behind their desk for 8 to 10 hours a day? Loads of people. Let's try and eradicate that as much as we can. Let's just get moving a little bit more, and you're going to feel better for it, like mentally as well. Next point is going to be cardiovascular work and how it links into fat loss. Now, again, it's come at a really good time based off the previous point, because yes, it can help with fat loss because it will stimulate some calorie burn, like I talked about earlier. But actually, you want to potentially add in some cardiovascular work. Again, if you're not like a runner, or you're not already doing some, and you're looking maybe at this from a blank canvas perspective, then yeah, you want to add some cardiovascular work into your weekly routine. What that looks like is down to your kind of levels of fitness and desire, basically. But the reason you want to add them in is for heart health, it's for mental health, it's for the improved recovery. If you've done a lifting session on a Monday and you go for a cycle on a Tuesday, you're obviously going to increase blood flow and flush out all the toxins and those sorts of things as well. But also just having an increased level of fitness, aerobic base of fitness, is actually going to improve your strength training in the gym as well. So there's really no negatives at all. And again, like looking at optimizing health, we should have a mixture of cardiovascular work, both lower and higher intensity, and strength training in our weekly regime. So again, if you're looking at a blank canvas, you want a couple of lifts. You want to be walking every single day, that kind of lower level stuff. If you've got a dog, then that makes life easier. If you're living in the UK, then it's a little bit harder, because right now it's absolutely hammering it down outside. But you also want to do some form of, elevation of the heart rate, whether that's on a bike, on a treadmill, running out on the road, even if it's just fast walking. Again, it depends on your start point, but you want to get some cardiovascular work in there, because not only will it help with your fat loss journey, but again, like I said earlier, it will help with optimizing kind of your overall health, improving your strength sessions, improving your recovery, and improving the way you look and feel. And who doesn't want that? And then I think going into the next point, and the final one of this talk, is your recovery and your sleep. So again, this is super, super important for optimal health. And I think, again, people that just think, right, fat loss, I want to lose fat at all costs, without thinking about the overall bigger picture. Your body needs to be in a good place to lose body fat. You need to be getting basically all your micronutrients through your food. You need to be sleeping 7-8+ hours a night. And you need to be actually spending some time recovering. So I can make a whole video on this kind of recovery side of things, but again, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Focus is absolutely on getting kind of adequate sleep, guys. Coming off the phone, 2-3 hours before you go to bed. So just eliminating that blue light. Your kind of active recovery. So we kind of talked about that already, but I'll link it back in. So if you've done a lifting session, the next day you might go for a 10,000 step walk, something like that. Again, help kind of flush toxins, get the blood flow going. You might also decide to go and do like a half an hour bike ride or something along those lines. That's also absolutely awesome. Things like getting into the sauna. If you've got access to that, that's an absolutely fantastic tool for not only recovery, but actually kind of spiking some key, what's the word I'm looking for? Growth hormone, basically. So I think there's a link with sort of growth hormone and hormones within the body from regular sauna use. You can use some cold therapy and things like that as well. That's been shown to reduce inflammation. So yeah, they're really, really key things, guys. Your sort of sleep and your recovery, and they have a massive effect on your hormones, and your hormones have a massive effect on fat loss. If you're cortisoled up to the hilt because you're stressed, you're not sleeping enough, you're overtraining, you're gonna slow down your fat loss. It's as simple as that. Whereas if you're getting adequate sleep, adequate recovery, You kind of having a nice bit of downtime as well, away from the family or the stresses of life, then you are going to put your body into a position to be able to lose body fat. So as you can see, it's a much bigger thing than just what you eat and how you train. There's so much more that goes into it, and it's much more complex. So you have to think about these things. But this kind of recovery and the sleep and all of that, this is optimizing health. This is stuff that we should all be doing. If you're super stressed, you probably do want to have a focus for 10 or 15 minutes a day on some deep breathing, just to kind of relax the body and stimulate the kind of the rest and digest sort of nervous system. These are things that we should be doing anyway, and people are not, and then they're wondering why they're carrying excess body fat. So I'm trying to give you guys a couple of little kind of extras here to basically speed those along, but optimize your health as well. And I think that final part, and I'm going to count it in this little bit of kind of sleep recovery, is your micronutrients. So your macronutrients are your carbs, fats, and your proteins. We've talked about protein. Fats and carbs get talked about in the link that I'm going to put in, but your micronutrients are absolutely vital. So that's all those little mini kind of nutrients that are required to just do tons of stuff for your skin, for your muscles, for your body, for your sleep, all these sorts of things. You need to be getting them in. How do we get them in? From a rainbow-like diet, guys. So tons of colour, fish, chicken, some red meat in there. Obviously, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you've got alternatives, but we want to be getting a nice kind of minimizing a processed food diet. So we want to focus on whole foods. So depending on how you eat, obviously, everyone now, there's way more kind of variation on how people eat. But regardless, you want to focus on minimizing processed food as much as possible. And if you need to get some extra supplementation in there for foods that you're missing, then get them in there. Again, this is a massive part of keeping the body happy and healthy, and that's just going to speed your fat loss journey up. So I think I'm going to call it there, guys. It's like nearly 30 minutes of hopefully high value information. If you like what you've kind of listened to, please like and subscribe to my channel. And please do feel free to reach out to me via the comment section, where I can potentially give you some help to your individual questions, should you have any. Remember, check the description below for the timestamps and the link to how to create your diet. Thanks very much, guys.